Lila had always been a quiet woman, content with her small life in the village, but her quietude had been shattered by the weight of sorrow. She had been married young, and for years, she prayed for a child to fill the silence of her home. Year after year, her belly remained empty, and with each passing month, the whispers from her husband's family grew louder. They questioned her, mocked her, and wondered if something was wrong with her. The hurt piled up, but she continued, her faith unwavering. Eventually, after years of prayer and fasting, her body finally showed signs of life, and her husband's family rejoiced with gifts and blessings. For a while, it seemed that their wishes had been granted, but the joy was short-lived. One by one, each of her children died, too young to know the world. With each loss, the pain in her chest grew heavier, and the whispers of the village grew more insistent. The villagers began to believe she was cursed. Lila's grief became a quiet presence, following her wherever she went, casting a shadow over her once bright smile. Yet in the face of all this loss, Lila did not stop trying. Each time a child died, she was determined to try again. Her strength, though tested, did not falter. She believed that one day she would carry a child who would survive, a child who would be the answer to all the sorrow she had carried. And so, when the next child arrived, Lila held him close with a fragile hope, clinging to the belief that this time would be different. But as the weeks passed, the fever came again, and the child died, just as the others had. It was at that moment, broken and on the edge of despair, that Lila sought out a healer in the village known for dealing with the spiritual and mysterious. The old man listened quietly, his eyes piercing through her pain, and when he finally spoke, his words were clear. To save her son, she would have to carry him differently. His advice was strange, almost impossible to believe. She would have to carry him with his head facing down, legs up, wrapped tightly in cloth. At first, she resisted. How could she do something so unnatural? But her desperation drove her to follow his advice. She did it with trembling hands, wrapping her son in the cloth each day, carrying him as the healer had instructed. The villagers continued to gossip, some accusing her of witchcraft, others questioning her sanity. Yet Lila remained steadfast. She knew what was at stake. Every day she bound her child to her back, head down, legs up, and prayed silently for his safety. The years passed slowly, each one a test of her resolve. But slowly the boy grew strong. No longer did he succumb to illness as his brothers had. He laughed, played, and grew in strength. Though the villagers continued to question her, Lila no longer cared. She had found her answer. She had given her son the gift of life, and that was all that mattered. The warm sun bathed the village in a golden light as Lila made her way down the dusty street. She walked slowly, her posture straight, the weight of her child strapped tightly to her back. His legs were raised, head resting against the fabric of the cloth she had carefully wrapped him in. The strange position caused whispers to follow her, but she paid them no mind. The eyes of the villagers, full of confusion and judgment, didn't faze her. She had long grown accustomed to the quiet mutterings and curious glances. "He's fine like this," she said softly to herself, as though the weight of the world didn't rest upon her shoulders. But the murmurs grew louder as she passed. Eyes followed her every move, filled with suspicion and disbelief. One man, standing by the market stall, couldn't resist the urge to speak. "Did you see how she carries him? Head down, legs up. It's unnatural." Nearby, a woman, clutching a basket of fruit, whispered in a hushed tone, barely audible to Lila. Could it be a curse? Or perhaps spirits are involved in this. Something dark. Lila didn't turn her head or alter her pace. She continued walking, each step deliberate, as if she had a place to be, and the opinions of others no longer mattered. The gossip spread like wildfire, but to her, it was nothing more than background noise. After years of pain and loss, she had become immune to the harsh judgments of the world. She walked with a quiet confidence, her mind focused on the one thing that mattered, her child. As Lila walked through the village, her mind drifted back to the days long before her life had taken this strange turn. In the quiet moments of the past, she had dreamed of the future, of children running through the house, of laughter filling the air. When she first married, her heart was full of hope. She prayed every night for a child to call her own. Her hands clasped together, she whispered to the heavens, believing that with enough faith, her wish would be granted. She had waited with the patience of a woman who had all the time in the world. "I've waited so long, I've prayed so hard," she thought, remembering the countless nights she knelt in the silence of her room, praying for a child, believing that one day her womb would carry the life she so desperately desired. But as the years passed, nothing happened. The emptiness in her heart grew, each month more painful than the last. No baby, no joy, only silence. Her husband, once so kind, began to change. His patience wore thin, and the whispers from his family grew louder with each passing year. His voice, once full of love, became colder, sharper. "You still can't give me a child?" he would say, his words cutting through her like a blade. "If you can't bear me a son, what good are you?" His words stung, but they were nothing compared to the constant whispers from his family. Her mother-in-law, always a harsh critic, would often comment in a way that made Lila feel like less than a woman. "Are you a tree?" her mother-in-law would ask, her tone bitter. "You eat every day, but still no fruit. What kind of woman are you?" The years slipped by, each one heavier than the last. Lila's hope dwindled, her body betraying her desires. Then one day, after countless prayers, she finally discovered she was pregnant. The joy she felt was indescribable. A new life growing inside her. But that joy was fleeting. Each time, when the child was born, a silent shadow would fall. The babies she carried into the world never had a chance. They would slip away before they could even take a breath, leaving Lila's arms empty once more. Each death felt like a part of her soul was being torn away. Yet she never gave up. Every loss only fueled her determination to try again. Even as her heart shattered with each passing, she refused to believe that this was the end. The seventh death had shattered Lila's spirit. The endless sorrow, the empty arms, the cold silence after each loss. She could no longer pretend that she wasn't broken. Her faith had faltered, and with it, the hope she had once carried so fiercely. There was nothing left to hold on to, nothing but grief and a growing sense of helplessness. Each passing day felt like an eternity, and the whispers of the village grew louder, colder, more accusing. It seemed like fate had condemned her, and no amount of prayer or pleading could change it. Desperate, Lila decided to seek out the healer that the villagers whispered about, an old man who was said to have knowledge beyond the ordinary, someone who could deal with the unseen forces that held sway over lives. He was known for his ability to guide women like Lila, those who had suffered loss, those whose children never survived. The old man had lived many years and seen much in his time. He knew of the spirits that walked among them and the strange forces that could not be explained by logic or science. Lila walked into the small, dark hut where the healer sat waiting, his weathered eyes piercing through the gloom. He studied her, taking in the pain that radiated from her like a heavy fog. There was no pity in his gaze, only understanding. He knew the weight of what she carried. She stood before him, feeling like a shadow of herself, vulnerable and broken, desperate for answers. "You are carrying them all wrong," the healer said, his voice low but firm. Lila stared at him, her eyes wide with confusion. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of disbelief and curiosity. "What do you mean wrong? I have tried everything. I prayed, I fasted, I begged the gods for help. What else can I do?" The healer's gaze softened, but his words were unwavering. "You carry them not as you should. You must carry them in a way that protects them, a way that shields them from what haunts your family. You must carry him upside down, with his head facing the earth and his feet towards the sky. Do this, and he will survive. This is the only way." Lila felt a chill run through her. She had heard many things over the years, but nothing had ever sounded like this. The idea of carrying her child in such a strange, unnatural way seemed incomprehensible to her. How could this possibly work? How could such a thing protect her baby? But as she looked into the healer's eyes, something in his gaze convinced her that perhaps this was the answer she had been seeking, an answer she had never imagined. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why must I do this? What does it mean?" The healer leaned forward, his face grave. "It is not for you to understand. Only trust that this is the way. This is the path that will keep him alive. Carry him this way, and the spirits will not take him from you." With nothing left to lose, Lila made the decision. She would follow his advice. It was the only choice she had. She left the healer's hut with a heavy heart but a renewed sense of determination. That night, she wrapped her newborn son in cloth as the healer had instructed, securing him tightly to her back, his head facing downward. It felt wrong, unnatural even, but as she adjusted him, the weight of her decision settled into her bones. She didn't know if it would work or if she was condemning herself to further sorrow, but she would do it. For her son. For the chance, no matter how small, that he might live. As the years passed, the boy grew stronger with each day. His small body, once frail and fragile, began to fill out. He laughed, he played, and he never fell ill. Not once. The villagers, who had once whispered in hushed tones, now watched in awe as Lila's child continued to thrive against all odds. They saw what they had never expected. He had survived. And more than that, he was flourishing. His bright eyes sparkled with life. His laughter rang through the village, and for the first time in years, Lila felt something she hadn't known in a long time. Peace. Yet, the whispers of doubt never ceased. Despite the boy's strength, despite the life that pulsed within him, the village still questioned. Some couldn't believe their eyes, still skeptical of the strange method Lila had followed. "Maybe she knows something we don't," one woman murmured, watching the boy run through the fields with his friends. "How else could he be alive, after everything? Why doesn't he die like the others?" Another voice wondered, as if the miracle in front of them could not possibly be explained. Lila overheard these whispers, but they no longer bothered her. She had long since stopped caring about the opinions of others. What mattered to her was that her son was alive. What mattered was that she had made the right choice. No matter how strange, no matter how much it went against the norms of their world. She had carried him this way because she believed, deep in her heart, that it was the only way to protect him. And now, seeing him grow, seeing him thrive, she knew she had done the right thing. On his 10th birthday, the village gathered to celebrate. There was no grand feast, no loud music, just a quiet joy that had been years in the making. Lila stood with her son, looking at him with a mixture of pride and cautious hope. The years of fear, the years of sorrow, had all led to this moment. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the village. Lila knelt down and gently untied the red cloth that had held him to her back for so long. With great care, she let him stand on his own, his feet touching the earth for the first time without the fabric wrapped tightly around him. He looked up at her, his face glowing with innocence and wonder, his eyes still full of the life that had defied the odds. "You're safe now," Lila whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek. The boy, now free to run and play like any other child, smiled brightly, and for the first time in her life, Lila felt a true sense of relief. The journey had been long and the pain had been deep, but now, for the first time, she could let go. The boy was safe. The boy had lived. And in that moment, all the years of struggle, all the hardship, all the isolation faded away. Lila knew that she had done whatever it took to protect him. And now, the world would see him for who he truly was. A miracle. The celebration for his 10th birthday was simple but filled with joy. The sun had set, and the village gathered to watch the boy, now full of life, running and playing with the other children. His laughter echoed in the evening air, the sound of a child who had defied the odds, whose survival had once seemed impossible. The other children chased him around, their movements carefree, their innocence contagious. Lila stood at the edge of the group, watching with a smile that spoke of both pride and relief. Her heart swelled as she observed her son, now strong and healthy, free from the fear that had once shadowed her every step. His small feet pounded the earth, and for the first time in many years, she felt a peace she had never known before. The boy, the child she had carried against all tradition and reason, was now everything she had hoped he would be. He was alive, and that was all that mattered. Lila's mother, who had once questioned her every choice, now stood beside her, a soft smile on her face. She gently placed her hand on Lila's arm, a gesture of understanding that spoke more than words ever could. "You were right," her mother said quietly. "We all laughed at you. We didn't understand. But now we see." Lila didn't respond. She simply nodded, her gaze still fixed on her son as he ran with the others. There was nothing left to say. The journey had been long and fraught with pain, but the result was standing before her. Her child, strong and full of life, able to walk upon the earth with no fear of death taking him. In her heart, Lila thought to herself, her voice a quiet whisper in her mind, "I did everything I could. I fought with every ounce of strength I had, and now he is alive. I know that he will live. No matter what comes next, he will survive." The years of sorrow, of loss, of fear had led to this moment. And in the quiet stillness of that evening, with her son playing freely, Lila knew that her sacrifice had been worth it. He was alive, and that was enough.